We are now recording and we're going to start. It's the Mike Tech Show, show number 774. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Smith. Thank you very much for downloading and subscribing to the show. Please visit the main website at miketechshow.com. You can email me questions and suggestions for show topics at miketechshow@gmail.com. You can leave me a voicemail message on Skype. The name is Mike Tech Show, all one word. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Mike Tech Show, and also facebook.com/Mike Tech Show. This show is brought to you by Instant House Call. Remotely support your customers unattended and on demand through firewalls. Try it free by clicking on the link on my website at miketechshow.com or go directly to instanthousecall.com and remember to use the promo code MikeTechShow to get your free 15-day trial. Instant House Call is the single program that we use to contact and support all of our clients, and it just works so well with me being now in 2 locations and my son being able to log in, and we can do all of our maintenance for that unattended mode. It is incredible. You got to try it out. So thank you for Instant House Call for continuing to sponsor the show. All right. So for tonight's show, I want to do a quick shoulder update on my broken shoulder. I also want to talk about the GPU shortage, which it's kind of interesting how I found out about that. Got a data recovery story, some more client moves, and then some listener email. So quick shoulder update. Everybody who was here last Thursday or seen the show, I talked about how my physical therapist recommended we stop and I see an orthopedic surgeon. Well, I seen an orthopedic surgeon on Tuesday. They took a new set of x-rays, and after him working my shoulder and moving it around and doing measurements and testing everything, he said, "Mike, you have a frozen shoulder." I was like, "Frozen shoulder?" "Yes." And he says, "I'm going to prescribe something that's going to really help you." And it was methylprednisone. I was going to say prednisone, but it's Prednir, Prednisone. It is a cortisone-like steroid, and it's a regimen and a pack for 6 days. I feel like a new person. It has helped me tremendously. And not doing the physical therapy, but he gave me some work to do where I have these pulleys. So I have 10 minutes of heat, 20 minutes of pulley work, and then 10 minutes of ice. And I got to do that every day. I have not felt this good in months and months since my injury. I can lift things, but I'm not overdoing it. I can move my arm. I've had no pain since Tuesday. I am way on the path of mending, and I want to thank everybody for all the great comments and people sharing info. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have an email that someone shared some exercise tips and stuff for the shoulder. So I am very, very happy. I just wanted to update everybody that there really doesn't look like there's going to be any surgery, and he didn't even need or order an MRI. So I am very, very happy. So last night, it's funny, full disclosure here on why there was a Tech Vets. When Carrie logged in Wednesday afternoon to Facebook, the first thing he seen was my post from the previous Wednesday announcing that we're going to be doing a show Wednesday night. He thought, "Oh man, I didn't realize I agreed I'm going to do a show with Mike tonight." So he promoted the show. So At 7:45 p.m., and I'm sitting here very relaxed. As a matter of fact, I have a beer open. I don't even have a shirt on. Nothing's set up here. And I get an email with the link to log in to do Tech Vets on StreamYard. And I called Carrie. I was like, when did that happen? And I was like, you know what? I can pull this together and be ready. So Carrie started, and I was only a couple minutes behind. And I was very, very close behind him starting because I can set up and I need like 10 minutes and I can set up. Get the microphone, get the mixer, play with everything on the system, get it all ready. It's very easy for me to get set up. So we do a Tech Vets. We do a nice post show. I will have a link to the YouTube, the whole thing, the pre-show, the show. Give a watch. I think you'll enjoy it. And after the show, when we stopped recording, Carrie and I continued to talk about a whole lot of things with him and I catching up. We talked for a couple hours. And one of the things he brought up is something I want to address tonight. And I didn't realize that GPUs, for graphics cards, that there's a shortage, and that's going to continue until 2022. I'm like, what world am I living in that I did not realize this? But I don't build computers. So the first link for tonight that I wanted to find a good link. There's a really good story in Maximum PC, but I couldn't find a link to that. So unless you subscribe to it, you're not going to get it. But this is GPU stock could struggle until 2022 as some countries get just 20 monthly units. If you were clinging onto the hope that the everlasting stock issues surrounding gaming hardware would ease by July, as AMD originally indicated, you might want to take a deep breath because analysts now predict it could take at least another year, if not more, before we can get our hands on the best graphics card and best gaming CPU once again. And yes, Taz nailed it on the head. It's because of Bitcoin miners, and that's something that the NVIDIA is actually blocking from being able to do. And it's because of the crypto miners combined with a slow response from the semiconductor industry that lacks the resources to adjust capacity. I didn't know there was going to be such a resource on this shortage. And I'm thinking, when Carrie told me, it's a good thing you got that replacement graphics card when you did. Go look at the price. Because I paid $259. I could sell that card for $700-800 right now. It's triple the price. If you look at all the different marketplace resellers on Amazon, for example, the prices are absolutely ridiculous. You look at eBay. I was oblivious to this because I don't build computers. When we order a computer, it's got the graphics card in it. It's usually the one built in, or if we're upping the graphics card, I have Dell. So it's very interesting. What is Dell doing on the systems? They got to be raising their prices if they're having a tough time with cards when I'm going for a independent separate graphics card. But most of the business computers I'm dealing with, they're Dell Optiplexes. It's the built-in Intel graphics, which that's all my client needs. They're running business software. They're not gaming. And we wouldn't do that for a high-end engineering system. Of course, we would go high-end graphics cards when someone needs to work with either AutoCAD or SolidWorks or programs like that. So I just wanted to bring that up, and everybody listening is probably like, Mike, where have you been? Yes, this has been happening, but it's just something that just went right over my head because I'm not in the thick of this for building systems, and this directly impacts Carrie and him building for clients and building for the show. And it's like, wow. So anyway, wanted to let everybody know about that. And if you can find a graphics card at the price that is good, you got to jump on it and get it. A client's son. I don't have the full story. He either dropped the drive, it's an external drive, or accidentally deleted it, but you couldn't get to a whole bunch of files that he needed. And he dropped the external drive off a couple days ago. And my son plugged it into the test unit that I can remote in with Instant House Call. And I remoted in and ran zero assumption recovery. And I've talked about this on different occasions. I should ask them to be a sponsor. So it is the software I actually learned from Carrie years ago. I ran the first step where it reads everything on the drive, and I let that run. It had to run overnight. I think it took like 16 hours. Then I needed to talk to my client's son directly to find out exactly what type of directory, what type of files am I looking for. Czar listed 129 gigs of the files he's looking for. So now I have that being saved. Like last night, I was working on that very late, actually, after Tech Vets and after we were all done. I have it saved onto the test drive, my test system, the internal C drive, which is a 500 gig SSD, and I'm glad it had the space. So I have 129 gigs sitting there. Tomorrow, my client is dropping off another external drive so I can copy the 129 gig over to that, give them both drives. Now, I don't know if the data is stable, if the programs can run, but I got back a lot of files, and I know my client's going to be happy. I do not have that much success sometimes with Czar because it does work. When it works, it's wonderful. But if there's physical damage to the drive, sometimes these programs, it's very hard to be able to recover data. So it's like 50-50, the odds sometimes. And it really just depends what was damaged and how. So did they continue using it after they deleted files? And then you have a hard time trying to, Now, someone says SpinRite. I don't use SpinRite anymore. I haven't used SpinRite for probably more than a decade. I had SpinRite actually damage some drives where I was unable to continue or do anything, and we had to just restore from backup. So in the early days when SpinRite came out, I had some success, but I haven't used SpinRite in a long time after it damaged some drives that I was working on from a server, from a client. And I'd have to say it was around 2007, 2008, somewhere's in there. So it's more than 10 years. But it used to be good, and I think it's still viable, but it's not a program I go to. Usually, as long as we have backups, if a drive fails, drives are cheap. And if a mechanical drive fails, we're going to replace it with a solid state drive or an NVMe. So I'm more interested in making sure we have good backup programs. Now, one of the things I reviewed with my client's son, I said, when you're done here, we want to establish a backup strategy for your system that you're using and for any external drives. How many times have you heard someone lose data on a USB stick or an external drive because they're not backing it up. You must back up the external drives with another external drive or online backup. You have to back up all of the disks, whether they're internal, external, small, large. If you're using that for something other than backup, then you need to back it up. So I go overboard on backups. I use a sync program to back up my data here. I also get an image of it, and then I'm also backing it up every night online. And you know what I do once a month? I run Fab's Auto Backup once a month anyway, just to have it, it's easy to run. I have a nice big external drive here, and I do the same on my system in Pennsylvania. I have everything backed up. As a matter of fact, you know what I did tonight? I logged into my system and ran a whole bunch of updates because I hadn't touched my main system in Pennsylvania for a while. So when I remoted in, Intel had some driver updates. There were some Windows updates. I ran Patch My PC so I could, different programs, there were a couple updates. I had a couple reboots. Everything's fine. And now my system is good. I'm going to have to do that again because I don't want to get home and find that I got all of these updates. And that's what happened when I came back down to Florida after a long period of not being here. I get back in, and yeah, someone in the chat, I use OneDrive also for my data, especially anybody who's working with their data from multiple locations or multiple machines or multiple platforms. I like OneDrive because, hey, it works for the Mac, it works for Windows. I can call it up on a file on my iPad, my iPhone. I don't do that often, but sometimes I do. So I live on OneDrive. I even back up my OneDrive. That's right. I use SyncBack Pro to make an extra copy when my SyncBack is running every night. I have it run every night at 2 a.m. I even have it pull all the files, so I have an extra copy on the hard drive in case something happens with OneDrive. Who knows? I back up my Office email, Office 365. There's no excuse if I lose a file. So now I don't want to have to wait for all the different updates. So one of the things, I was always leery of leaving my system on down here in Florida because, you got the hurricanes and possible power outage. So what I am going to do, and I got to do that within the next month or two down here, the Watt box that you might have heard Carrie Holzman and I talk about. It's a box that I know Marvin B. from Podnuts Pro had some trouble with a different model than the one I have, but it was still a Watt box. He had problems. And he had production servers that went down where there was a problem with that Watt box. So I don't have that kind of production going on here, but I have a 2-outlet, very small Watt box. I'm going to hook it up for my system down here because what I would like to do is occasionally turn this computer on while I'm in Pennsylvania, remote in, and make sure all the updates are done. Make sure, all the antivirus is updated, all the drivers, Windows updates. So when I do come back down, I could turn on my computer and everything's updated. Or it's pretty close to being updated because I don't want to. It's like that laptop you haven't opened for a few weeks and then you open it and you're like, oh, I really got to use it. But now you have all the updates. That's why open your laptop more frequently if you don't normally open it up all the time. And this is what I tell clients because there's so many things happening for updates that you got to keep it up to date because I guarantee when you want to use it, then all those updates are going to happen. So anyway, that was my data recovery story that led into backup. There is an uptick in client moves again. I'm like in a constant state we are of moving. So we have the one set of attorneys moving from one floor to another. And that date just kept moving and moving. First, it was supposed to be March 1st. Then it went to March 8th. Then it went to the 12th. Then the 15th. Now it's St. Patty's Day, the 17th. They're driving me crazy. If they weren't such a big retainer client, I can't be angry, but it makes it very difficult for scheduling resources. So now we're locked in. No matter what, it's going to be March 17th. I know there's going to be a terrible snowstorm that day. There's not, but just because, there's got to be something that's got to come in to mess with this. So we're all set finally, and there's so much prep. I had to make sure there was a duplicate Verizon Fios install. They're now changing the phone system. So when they kept changing the dates, they had to keep changing the number all the phone numbers that are going to be ported had to be changed. The phone company that they're going with has to make sure that there's training involved for the users for the new phones. There's so many things. The multifunction copier has to be moved and done right. So I'm going to have my oldest son and my middle son taking care of the physical, I guess, not the physical computers we're responsible for moving. Everything else is going to be movers. So they're going to move the workstations and take them down, rehook them up. We have a physical server that is a real server, and it is a domain controller. So that's got to go down. The firewall has to be set up down there. So there's a lot of things. It'll be an all-day affair, and that's just moving them from one floor to another. So excuse me for that. I had just caught my throat. Okay, well, unpause. Now, yesterday, I am working with the CEO from another client, and he informs me they're looking at a new place tomorrow. So now we have another move. So this move is because they're in a temporary place that they've been given an order. They have to be out of there by April 15th. So I don't know if that's even possible. So they're looking at a place, and then we got to investigate what about the cabling, what's going to be necessary. So that's just going to be a lot of work. And I can tell you there will be a lot of stories coming from that. All right. So now, with the moves, I want to get to some email for the show. And this is a link that Ron B. sent me. And this is interesting that I think you need to check out from Yahoo News. U.S. issues a warning after Microsoft says China hacked its mail server program. And I know there's been a 0-day exploit for Exchange servers that everybody if you have an Exchange server on premise, you got to be at the latest, greatest updates. So take a look at that. That was from Yahoo News. Thank you, Ron B. I thought this was so funny. And this is from Bob. And Bob's like, hey, Mike, I just finished listening to your Tech Vets podcast with you and Corey and your latest Mike Tech Show podcast. Excuse me, he said Corey with Carrie. when you were talking about how you got your website shut down for 36 hours. I know you are now not playing your intro and extra music on your Mike Tech Show podcast, even though you have permission from the artist who wrote the song. But because of the issues you were having, I thought you might appreciate this. Metallica was supposed to play for the BlizzCon video game conference, but they ended up playing at their studio and streaming their performance on Twitch. But a little ways into the performance, Twitch censored them for playing their own copyrighted music. And substituted elevator music in its place. It seems quite ironic since it was the drummer from Metallica who was responsible for shutting down Napster for pirating their music years ago. They couldn't even play their own music on Twitch without being censored. I have attached the link to the article. I am going to have that in the show notes. Metallica gets muted by Twitch at Game Conference. So there you go. You have a group that can't even play their own music online. So I think we've went too far we're going too far with the identification. And yes, I know it's fair. The music, the artists need to be compensated. And I do agree with that. But there has to be a point that I think the AI or whatever's being used to do this analysis just has to get better. And maybe that's the thing. And there has to be an easier way to prove who you are. So, or prove that you have the rights. Like, I could play Liz Longley's music. She's given me her rights. But how do I convey that to wherever I'm going to post that content? So that makes it very, very hard. So I do understand. This is a question from Doug in the chat. I have a CPA client that has turned over decision-making to a young, aggressive go-getter. Most of what he is doing is good for the company, but this one I had a tense argument with him. He has chosen to cancel the paid version of LogMeIn they have been using for more than a decade in favor of a free version of TeamViewer. I provided links related to license restrictions, which he refused to look at. So I told him it is in violation of the license term because you are using it for commercial purposes. And you are doing this against my advice. I'm wondering if it's a violation of FINRA. And do CPAs fall under FINRA? No. CPAs do not fall under FINRA, but you ask a great question, and I didn't have an answer, and I started thinking of this. If they're using the free version of TeamViewer for commercial purposes, they are breaking the law. I think it's pretty obvious if you're breaking the law, you are not compliant. And, I don't know if it's stated obviously because common sense has to take over. If you're breaking the law, are you FINRA compliant? Are you HIPAA compliant? I don't believe you are. Because I don't think, and maybe there is somewhere buried in something that, in order to be compliant, you're also not supposed to break the law. You really shouldn't kill someone. Do they have to say that? Do they? I don't think so. And I think in any court of law, they would use the reasonable term. Is it reasonable to think you can break the law and still be compliant? I don't think it is. So that's my argument that I would use, which is reasonable and common sense, and let that play. But I just thought it was funny. I'm like, I didn't know how to answer this at first for Doug, and then I started thinking about this, and I was like, they're breaking the law. They are not compliant. I don't care where you measure this. And that should come first and foremost. And I don't care how young and aggressive he is. He needs to live a little longer and get some more experience and hopefully your wisdom would override at any kind of a management level when you say, he's encouraging you to break the law. You're putting your company is at risk. And that's how I think you should approach that, Doug, to senior management. All right. I think they would understand and hopefully agree with you. This is from Terry. I am sorry to hear about your shoulder. Like I mentioned before, I had a torn labrum, torn rotator cuff, bone spurs, and other problems. I have one therapy session to go at the end of March. I have done therapy on my shoulder either at home or at the therapy center since November. On my last therapy session, I could lift my arm 151 degrees. The therapist and my physician's assistant said I may never be able to lift my arm as high as I could before. It sure sucks getting old. Yes, Terry, I am 100% in agreement with you, and it's so bad, and my prayers are with you for recovering, and hopefully you'll recover better than they even anticipate. So as he's wishing me good luck with my shoulder, and I opened up the show with that, with how I'm doing, but I wish you luck. And he also attached some exercises for me. Okay. Final email by Austin. I finally got a chance to listen to all the shows. The show on how to check for security score of WordPress websites was fantastic. Also, the story on how a hacker tried to poison the water supply was just scary. Yes, thank you. And yes, I'm so glad they were unsuccessful. Any updates on the story? That's a great question, and I need to further investigate. I don't know, and I don't think there's any reports yet from the Secret Service and the FBI because it was in their hands the last time I checked. But you're right, there should be a follow-up. So something Austin's asking is a show on securing your WordPress website and doing maintenance. I did one a long time ago on an early podcast, and things have changed since then. So I will put together a checklist, things you can look for that you can make sure. The very first thing you can do, and this is the obvious, is always make sure you are at the latest, greatest version of WordPress. Make sure you're at the latest, greatest for any plugins that you're using. But before you ever do an update, have a full backup of your website. If you don't have software to do it, then you buy software to do it. SyncBack Pro has the capability. You give the login information. It's what I do to back up my MikeNation.net, Tech-Vets, my other website, MHS.me. I make sure that's all backed up on a regular basis. So this way, if I did apply an upgrade and it blew everything up, hey, I can just go back into the FTP and I can restore everything. So just make sure you're backing up your website before you apply them. But that is one thing, that's one big obvious thing you can do to protect your website. That is it for tonight's show. I want to thank everybody for listening and staying subscribed. And also, the video is now saved and posted on YouTube. So make sure you check it out, view it, but also subscribe. I want to get the subscribers up. So if you can help me out there, I really appreciate it. So if you purchase anything from Amazon, use our link. Carrie Holzman and I share a link for Amazon where you click on that link, then add the items to your cart. And when you check out, we get a small commission. That commission can really add up when you start adding thousands of users, using it. It makes a big difference. It really helps us out, and we appreciate that. Your price stays the same. Why not help out Tech Vets and the Mike Tech Show, Carrie Holzman and myself? I really appreciate that. And we thank you for using that. Also, Fab's Auto Backup 7 Pro. We use it so many times, almost every day. We definitely use it multiple times during the week. And we would very much like you to use our affiliate link when you buy the software. That helps me out, and I really appreciate that. Someone asked in the chat, does the Amazon link work for outside of the US? And Carrie and I get asked that all the time. It does not. Unfortunately, we are stuck with only the US. All of our listeners outside of the country, and there are many, we can't take advantage of that. So thank you for asking and thinking about us. We really appreciate that. That is it for the show tonight. Kind of watch Twitter and Facebook, because there might be a show from Marvin B. from Podnuts Pro and myself this weekend. And we will definitely Facebook and tweet if we're getting together to do a show. Now, we are getting together. The question is, are we going to have time, and are we going to do a podcast, somehow record something? And anytime we get together, we always find a way to do some kind of a recording. So that's it, everybody. And just an FYI, Carrie and I are actually going to try to do a show every Wednesday night. Boy, that is super ambitious, as you know, for the two of us, because we are very busy. But we're gonna give it a good try. So that's it. Bye-bye, everybody.